Hello, everybody. Good evening and welcome to the United Stand. It's the Sunday night show and we can talk about football on the Sunday night show, which is brilliant. Transfers, we might touch a bit on that, but we can talk about football. Man City lose, Man United win. I've got Ricky, Adam and Beth on the show. How are you doing?
Sounds
good. Thank you, Mark.
Good. Well, we've got lots to talk about. We're going to talk about whether we're really title contenders because I watched all the match vlogs from the three who were at the game last night who surround me. And I definitely remember Ricky saying, you know, these games can be a one-off. So we'll talk about title credentials. We'll talk about whether we should be delving into the transfer window. We'll talk about striking options, you know, Cavani, Martial, Greenwood. We're going to talk about Pogba. Where's the best place for Pogba? Is it the left wing? But we're going to start off with something that's really sort of hitting the fan base since yesterday. Varane announced on the pitch. You three were all there. We'll start off with you, Beth, first on this one. Next week, Varane, Sancho, Ollie's got a big decision to make. Are you a change the team person? Or are you like, we've won 5-1, we don't change it?
I'm a change the team person, to be honest. When you've got players like that coming in, I definitely think you should change the team. I thought Lindelof had a really good game yesterday, don't get me wrong. I thought, God, if he's playing like that every week, then that would be great for us. But at the end of the day, we have just signed Raphael Varane for a reason, and that reason is because we need a solid centre-back partnership that's going to take us to the next level and to get us to win the league. We know from last season that Harry Maguire and Lindelof have their faults. That's not going to go away, and Varane needs to come in. He needs to get that partnership with Maguire. So even though Lindelof did play well, and you look at it and you think, you don't deserve to be dropped, but like we were saying last season, we need like the same-ish team week in, week out, and we need them partnerships to be built. And at the end of the day, Varane and Maguire are going to be the centre-back partnership. So I think that transition does need to be made. And for me, Sancho needs to come into the team as well. I mean, I've gone on about it quite a lot. We did win 5-1 yesterday, a great performance. Pogba and Bruno and Greenwood really, really turned up. And that's one of the reasons why we did win that game. But last season, again, we did beat Leeds 6-2. So we do play into Leeds' hands a little bit, like they play into our hands a little bit. And I do think we can't just take that 5-1 and think, wow, we're going to be absolutely amazing this season. You've got to look at the games ahead and you've got to look at the weaknesses. And for me, Dan James on that right wing was a big weakness. That's just my opinion. And I think Sancho coming into that position would make the team even stronger. And we've bought him for this amount of money. We know he's going to do well. I think you need to start embedding him into the team. So with Southampton, I would definitely make them little changes. But them little changes, all it does is make us better. And the fact we were still winning 5-1 and putting in that performance last week, it's really exciting to see when these signings are coming in, how it's going to progress even further.
Ricky, we'll drop to you next. I was going to go to Adam, but the fact that Beth would drop Dan James, I thought, you know, let's get Ricky in quick here. Very impressive yesterday. Although you were like, well, we'll talk about that. Well, you can talk about it now. It's like, you know, we beat Leeds. Leeds play a certain way. I think they're more than open to get beaten if it goes a certain way. And I think, you know, you were part of that crowd yesterday. I think they look like rabbits in the headlights. And I think the crowd don't get enough mention yesterday. I just think Leeds, watching it on the TV, I don't know whether you picked it up in the game, but I couldn't believe it. I know they didn't have Calvin Phillips and they were missing that Llorente we spoke about on Thursday night, but I know they had tactics, but they just seemed so overwhelmed. It made United players' job so much easier because of how loud and the fans were. But yeah, talking about Southampton and ahead of that, would you make changes to a winning team? You know, Varane, Sancho, or do you stick with it? Or you might make other changes. You know, where was Matic?
It is a bit of a tricky one. It's a fantastic win, first day of the season, 5-1. And there is this sort of a golden rule football. When I was a young lad, you always used to say you don't change a winning team. And a team that wins 5-1, you know, it was a great win. So it is a bit of an awkward one, but he has spent all this money on these players for them to play. And, you know, I think the trickiest of our first three fixtures before the international break is the Wolves game. So you could also ask the question, is it worth keeping the same team next week and bring them in for Wolves? But you could also point out maybe it's good to give them a run out in a game where you think you've got more chance of winning it, and then they settled in a little bit for the Wolves game. Wolves made a right fist of it at Leicester yesterday, I believe. So I don't think they're going to be a walkover Wolves when we play them.
They were quite good, actually. They did play well, yeah.
So I think that's going to be the toughest for the first three fixtures. I'm not saying we've got to win at Southampton first. Like I said last week, we've got to get off to a good start. And we've got to take each game as it comes. Although I'm speaking about the Wolves game, Southampton game now, we should be concentrating on winning it. And I think overall, I'd have to say, if he's going to start playing Varane and Sancho regularly, then maybe you should do it straight away, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just to pin you down then, Ricky, you didn't answer the question. Would you drop James for Sancho?
If I was the manager, no, I wouldn't. But do I expect him to do it? Yes, I do. Do I blame him for doing it? No, I don't. You know, he spent all that money on him. I thought Dan James had a really good game. You know, people get carried away with who scores the goals, who makes the goals. You know, you do need workers in your team. It's a team game. They've all got, you know, they've all got different jobs and different, you know, they're a cog in the team. Dan James's work. Do you remember the crunching tackle he made when they were on a break? I remember him winning an header that he headed down to one of our players. You know, he's only about 5'6", isn't he? He was. I thought Dan James had a really good game, doing the sort of job that people don't appreciate, perhaps. But I thought he had a really good game.
He got. I tell you what, our player ratings. He got 5.4, 6 being average.
Yeah, it's a little bit low. That I think. A little bit low.
Yeah, no, it's all about opinion, Ricky. People do just think about who's scored the goals, who's made the goals. That's all they think about. I'm sure of it. You know what I mean? He's a system player. I've said it before. You know, I've come round to your way of thinking. He's a system player, but I just suppose it's about that. I mean, Adam, what are your thoughts? Because I disagree with Ricky there. I think he will. I don't think he will bring Sancho and Varane in. I think he should. But, you know, Ollie, when I saw that team news yesterday, and you said it in your match vlog, I said, and I'm really glad I said this, I said, I don't agree with the team. He's got big balls because no one had picked that. Everything in my body wanted to say, what the fuck is he doing with that team? But I was like, it's the first game of the season. This could bite me badly. So I just went, I tell you what, he's got big balls to pick a team like that because no one would pick it. And this is the thing about Ollie. We'll all go, he'll bring Sancho and Varane in. And he won't. He'll stick with Lindelof and James. I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
Mate, I was with you. Excuse the voice, everyone. It was a long weekend, and before the game yesterday, Vicky will vouch for me. I was intoxicated beyond belief. I was ill walking up to the game, and then the team news dropped, and I just woke up. I seen McFred in the team, and I went, "What the fuck?" I was exactly the same, and everyone around me. Walking in, that was the vibe, the start. It was like, I said, right, okay. He's got to have some form of plan here for these going forward. He has to be playing them slightly differently than what he normally does. This is going to be, it just looked like it was going to be a different game. Putting McFred in, it had to be different. Otherwise, he was, like you said, Mark, it's big bollocks just to do that and put that in, especially the way Matic and Donny have played in pre-season. And everyone's like, oh, all these favourites. And then that was what it was like before the game. And then we set off. And Vicky was touching on it then about people who had decent games. It wasn't one player on the pitch who didn't have a decent game yesterday. Everyone played well. And we had some outstanding performances on top of that. It was a team performance. And for me, in terms of changing the team going forward, I would because I know that Southampton ain't going to play like Leeds. I know that Varane being at the back there gives Maguire license to do what he did yesterday and join the midfield and bring the ball forward. And when you do that as a centre-back, Rio Ferdinand did it better than anyone. Them low blocks open up because that then frees up a man or one of our danger players in that front line, which we have got danger all over. It frees up one of them players there. It could give Bruno a bit more space. Pogba, Greenwood, Martial, whoever's playing, could actually find a bit of space because Maguire was doing that quite often. More in the first half, I thought Maguire was carrying the ball forward. And it's no surprise Bielsa came out and said we just could not get near them. We could not get near them. We looked fitter. We looked sharper. I thought we controlled it without having control, if that makes sense. I thought we outfought Leeds in the midfield yesterday. And that was largely in part down to McFred, because they both battled and they both put a shift in yesterday. I can't fault what they did yesterday, but it's a new game at weekend, and we're talking about what suits what game, and this is what we were talking about the other day. There's a little tweak here and there, which changes everything, and maybe Varane coming in just gives us that license to play a little bit more different. And I don't want to put Lindelof down because I thought he was superb yesterday. I thought him and Maguire were absolutely awesome. But at the end of the day, you've got a World Cup winner there who's been and seen every scenario. And he's used to this sort of low block game, playing with Real Madrid. He's used to this style of football. He's not going to be foreign to anything that's coming his way against Southampton. United are going to control the game. We know that. I do think that Southampton have lost a little bit of bite in losing Ings. I know Armstrong came in yesterday, played well. But to be honest, Everton battered them yesterday. And we've seen what we did with Everton. I know they didn't have Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin, but we've seen how we controlled Everton in that game. I just feel like he has to change it, personally. And I think this is the lesson he has to learn from last season, because we beat Leeds 6-2 last season and we carried on playing McFred. I just feel like now we have to have seen what happened last time. And McFred are limited. They are both limited. They're not got that extra bit when it comes to a low block. They can't carry the ball forward. I think they're tenacious, and in an open game, they can be great because their energy levels run riot yesterday. But when a low block comes around, we see the frailties and what they haven't got that a Donny or a Matic might have. So I'd be calling possibly Matic or Donny in. I'd be calling Varane in, and I would definitely be bringing Sancho in as well, because the more we do subtle little changes like that, but keeping the core. This is, like I said the other day, we're Man United now. I expect players to be thinking, if I play well, I still have to look over my shoulder next week. My position is not secure. And that's what you need, because every single Man City player is looking over their shoulder every single game. Every single game. And that's why teams like that win the league, because the strength in depth is there. And I think we've got that all over the pitch right now.
I think with me, I sort of mentioned this morning, so I don't want to repeat the point. Is that there was a moment in that game, and it was the best thing McTominay did, and it was the worst thing Lindelof did, and it was 0-0. Cross came in, Lindelof loses Bamford. He's got two legs of cement. Bamford's got him on the front post, and McTominay reads it, gets there first, heads it out. If he doesn't, Lindelof's lost him. Bamford's got a free header on the front post. He probably scores. And I'm like, are we going to wait for that moment against Southampton, or are we just going to put a better centre-back in? And that's it for me. And I agree with what Adam says there. For me, Lindelof played really well, but this is what a Pep and a Klopp do. I've got one of the world's best centre-backs here. Why do I pick somebody who's not as good just because he had a good game? I've got to be ruthless in this game. And also, Sancho and Varane, well, Varane's quicker than Lindelof and Maguire. So you know you can play a high line. Varane's 100% got to come in. Sancho, I think, has got to come in because he's carrying a big price tag. And like Ricky said, he's carrying a big price tag. And with all due respect, Dan James does a good job, but Sancho's going to play more games. You may as well get him in the team quicker. I'm going to go for you first, Ricky, on this one, simply because you mentioned in your match vlog, Man City have lost today. I think that's a great result for Spurs. Absolutely brilliant result for us. I celebrated it like one of our goals yesterday. I was like, come on, because the more points they drop, I don't mind Liverpool and Chelsea winning, but Man City for me, I can't stand them this year. More than any year, I can't stand them. And I also know they're probably the favourites. So they've dropped points. We've won. You mentioned Southampton and Wolves. I think we've got West Ham, Newcastle and Villa after that. You win them 6 games, you're definitely above City. You might be 3-6 points ahead of Man City with a bit of luck. You mentioned it, though, yesterday, the Leeds game. There is that risk that we get carried away with it. Where we are at the moment, we're only 1 game in, but you've seen us play. Do you think we are genuine title contenders? Has yesterday changed your mind at all?
It doesn't change my mind. No, it's too early to say. And I think I pointed out in that blog yesterday, really early in the season, last season, Aston Villa beat a strong Liverpool team 7-2, didn't they? You know what I mean? So I'm not comparing us to Aston Villa, but strange things do happen in football, and maybe it's just, I was about to say a one-off, but we also beat Leeds 6-2 last season, didn't we? Also, you've also got to point out that that we did that without using any of the new players, which would, there's 2 ways of looking at that. Obviously, you could say, well, that means we're going to be a bit stronger as well when we get the new players in. But at the same time, you've got to look at it and sort of say, it's almost certainly a one-off because it happens so infrequently. Last year, we put 6 past Leeds, we put 9 past Southampton when they played a full game with 10 men, though, didn't they? In fact, 9 men near the end. Who else did we score a lot against? It was pretty rare that we scored a lot of goals last season. I think they might be the only where we scored sort of more than 3.
Our first 2 games of the season as well. We'll beat Southampton 10-0 next week, and everyone's saying we're 10.
So it's with those same players. You know, it was pretty rare that we scored a lot of goals in a game last season, and I don't think there's any reason to start thinking if we're going to start banging them in left, right, and centre after one game.
Beth, you know, you well, to be fair, Beth, you can't drop down on this because last week you were the only one who said we're going to win the league. Yeah. I mean, how you feel? Well, I suppose the question for you is they're not with title contenders because you already think we are. But you know, that was the first game of the season. A week ago, it's a prediction. Did you see things yesterday that, you know, have changed your opinion from what you said a week ago? Not that you don't think we're going to get first, but, you know, did you see change in the way that we played? And does that give you, you know, more enthusiasm or less?
It's hard to tell. It really is hard to tell because, one, it's the first game of the season. Two, it's the first time the fans are back. And it's a team that last season we did do very well against, and they play a way that did suit our style last season, and it still suits our style now. We've got very attacking forwards, and we play very well when a team opens up to us. So you can't fully tell, but what I did see yesterday was, like Adam said, a team effort. Every single player on that pitch turned up, and if that happens over and over again this season, we've got as good a chance as...
She's gone. You've muted yourself. You're back.
Oh, back.
Yeah. No, you're gone again.
And we, can I add something while Beth?
Yeah, go on. Yeah, she shut herself down there.
We spoke after the Everton game, Matt. That friendly, you and I, where I said like it might be a one-off, and these things happen, and we spoke about the goals all being from set pieces in that game, and that's not really repetitive. You're not going to expect to score goals regularly from set pieces purely because you don't score that many goals from set pieces. So something that happened in yesterday's game, which I find fascinating. Obviously, Pogba got 4 assists. At first, I thought that must have been I've got to say, by the way, I got a lot of grief for not mentioning Pogba in my fan cam.
But you didn't mention bloody Bruno either. I noticed that one more. And Greenwood was absent as well.
I couldn't remember the fact that he'd made I think it was the one that the referee had to use his watch to give us over the line. I didn't remember Pogba putting that ball through. I didn't realise he had 4 assists when I was doing that. But he had 4 assists, Pogba. So when people are getting euphoric about it and thinking, oh, this is the way forward and this is what's going to happen, Pogba got 3 assists last season in the whole season, right? And he got 4 yesterday in the first game. So all I'm pointing out is it's something that's happened, and don't start thinking that it can necessarily be like that every week. You know what I mean?
But also on that, you also said in that Everton game that we weren't creating chances. Now, yesterday, we created chances galore, all from open play. And one man in particular should have had 3 assists, but for poor finishing, and that was Mason Greenwood. So for me, the positive from yesterday and what gives me a bit more encouragement was the fact, Beth just touched on it then again, every player turning up, and I know the crowd brings that extra excitement opening day, and I'm not getting carried away with the opening day. But if we're going to go back to certain things that happened last season and whatnot, this Leeds side took 5 points off. This team took 4 points off Man City last season as well. And they're no pushovers. Bielsa changed his tactics last year to cope with us, but then thought he could go back again and take us on. And for me, him coming out saying that we couldn't get near a Manchester United, the Leeds team that runs more than anyone, that's fitter than anyone, holds better stats than anyone this season. That, for me, is a big, big thing. And I know we need to consistently perform like that more. And there are going to be other challenges through the season. But the fact that we created chances without a Varane, Martial, Sancho, Rashford on the pitch, where all these goals were in before Sancho and Martial even came on the pitch, the space and the interchange in that front line yesterday was something I've not seen in a long time in Manchester United. And you know what? We said it before. Mickey touched on it on a previous show as well when he said a lot could have changed in that game. We could have... If they'd have took their chance, then it might have been a different game. We deserved absolutely everything we took out of that game yesterday. And we created the better chances. I can't remember David De Gea having an easier day. I really can't. I wasn't expecting it to be that way, but Leeds weren't in the game. They were lucky with an absolute worldie. I know it was a fantastic goal, probably the best of the bunch, but let's be honest, that was the only way they were going to break United down yesterday. And we got what we deserve yesterday. We should have had 9 goals yesterday. First half, we should have been 3 or 4-0 up, but for poor finishing. But for me, that's where I look at it and go, I'm feeling a little bit more positive, because Ricky said it, when was the last time we actually just put teams to bed and just cruised to the end of the game? We got it all in one game yesterday, and that has to be more consistent. Like that changes your mindset, and you're thinking, wow, we did just batter them. We weren't lucky at any stage of that game. Even when we went 1-1, it was like, they don't really deserve that. Bit sloppy start to the second half, but we kept going. We kept playing the same way, and you know what? We got what we deserved, and that was a very comprehensive win. Considering we didn't have most of the ball, I couldn't believe Leeds had more to play, but I didn't see that stat until later.
When I saw it afterwards, I really could not get my head around that fact.
I couldn't believe that they had more possession, but that goes to show it's what you do with it.
I do think as well, having Pogba, that freedom in the midfield with Bruno is a massive, massive factor in why we were creating the chances that we were creating. I think Greenwood's movement, for one, was absolutely excellent. That's something that kind of did get lost yesterday. Greenwood's movement, Ollie's definitely been working on that with him. It allowed Bruno a lot more space. We saw towards the end of last season, Bruno was a bit tired as well, but he was constantly on Bruno. Yesterday, because of the runs that people were making, Bruno had that space, Pogba got that space, and because of Pogba's presence in the midfield, him being allowed to get forward, him having the physicality to, when he basically was getting fouled, still being able to carry that ball forward, it takes the pressure off Bruno, and it allows Bruno to link up with someone who's on his wavelength, and them two stringing the passes in the midfield. I think it's a massive, massive positive now. If we are looking to do a title challenge, which I think we've definitely got the capabilities to do, thinking about how many chances we created yesterday and how well we played yesterday, with players coming in as well into that, very good players as well, keeping Pogba to take that workload off Bruno and allowing that space, I think is a massive plus for us, because now in the midfield, if Pogba is allowed that freedom, you've got defenders thinking, wow, we've got to keep Greenwood quiet, we've also got to keep Bruno quiet, we've also got to keep Pogba quiet. On top of all this, it's not just the Bruno show, which allows more people to get involved and more chances opening up, hence why Pogba ended up getting 4 assists yesterday and Bruno a hat-trick as well.
I think with we'll talk about the Pogba thing in a minute, because I know Beth's got a few things to say about what she's heard on Sky and stuff like that. But I think, Pogba with Bruno, definitely last season you could see we suddenly started creating chances for the number 9, and it happened yesterday. And when you play Rashford and Greenwood off the right, they're wide forwards, they're not creators, so everyone knows to swamp Bruno because he's the only creative force, and Pogba and Bruno together do really well, but defensively I don't think it works. It won't work as well. I think I loved the game yesterday. I've probably not watched it as many times as Ricky. How many times have you watched it, Ricky, so far?
What, yesterday's game?
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to rewatch it yet. I've had a bit.
I was going to say, because I've only watched it on Match of the Day. I do want to watch it again.
I've watched Match of the Day, but I haven't watched a match back yet.
But I was more impressed with Match of the Day, because when you watch it live, and obviously it'd be different for you because you're in the ground, how clean the finishing was. Because you watch it and you go, oh, that's a goal for Bruno. But the finishing was so clean, and the assist was so clean. We were so well drilled. It was so energetic, like Adam said. But I will be honest, just to answer the question about whether we're title contenders, I said 3rd, and I still think 3rd, because we've only had one game. It's early days. And Leeds, to me, did exactly what they did at Christmas. I couldn't believe it. I was like, they just opened up at Old Trafford. I was like, this is, this is why I love watching Leeds. Everyone goes, how can you say you love watching Leeds? I'm not saying they're going to win. I love watching Leeds because they open the game up and it becomes a good game. And, United took advantage of that. But I will say this, it feeds into, what I want to ask everybody anyway. For me, you've got Sancho, Pogba, Rashford, Greenwood, Martial, Cavani, Bruno, Van der Beek. If you put Declan Rice where Fred is, or Jorginho where Fred is, or Fabinho where Fred is, I'd sit here on this show and say, I think we're going to win the league. Not with definite, but I'd say I'm genuinely think we're going to challenge for the league. My issue is that, and with 2 weeks left in the transfer window, I don't think we'll address that issue, but I still think I marked Fred quite low yesterday. He got a goal. I was very happy for him. And, obviously the Stretford end and everyone in there loved it. But there was one point when we were attacking in the first half, and I think Pogba laid it off to him, and his first touch was a tackle. It went so far ahead of him, he had to try and tackle it. They passed it through and they got at the back 4. And I was like, that's the holding midfielder. And I thought, if that's Matic, all right, you question whether he's got the energy. but he'll control it within a metre and he'll play it. And Fred's first touch was like an excited puppy. It was like, I'm on an attack. Woof, he's lost it. And they passed it through him. And I was like, Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool, that's a problem for us. And I like Fred. I think Fred's probably could have done the role that McTominay did, to be fair. I thought, McTominay played very well and maybe Fred could do that. But to be a title contender, I think we need a midfielder, and I want to get into that. We'll start with you on this one, Adam, because I think it's your turn. You sort of touched on it a few minutes ago anyway. The midfield played well yesterday. I mean, I had people in my DMs bloody going mad. The abuse was ridiculous. It's about time you put some respect on McFred. And I was like, I've been on about McFred for a year. I'm changing after 90 minutes. Come back in 3 months. If they do that for 3 months, I might consider saying, they're the answer. But one thing I would say, I don't know what your thoughts. I thought they played very differently to last year. McTominay definitely was more advanced, and that was my get out of jail, because I always say I think McTominay's a better player when he's allowed to get forward. Yeah,
I mean, I mentioned it in my fan vlog as well, that it was like having 2 8s on the pitch in the way they played. We utilised their good points in their energy and their tenacity. That's what Fred and McTominay have both got bundles of. They're going to
just quickly. They were man of the match against Leeds at Christmas as well. They both played. It might be a Leeds thing.
Yeah, it was the perfect game if it was going to be like that, because Leeds were never going to outrun Fred and McTominay. Yeah, I mean, if there's 2 guys you want to put in there and run a marathon for you, it's probably them 2. They'll run all day long, won't they?
3 with Dan James.
Dan James. Forget Dan James.
Before when you mentioned before, Adam, about those the Leeds players running so much and having that much energy. I was thinking it there and then, and thinking maybe that was all he's thinking with Dan. I was thinking Dan James as well as McTominay and Fred. They're going to match him for energy, aren't they? So
I mean, to be honest, I honestly didn't see Dan James doing much defensively yesterday, because he didn't have to, because Fred and McTominay pretty much forced Leeds into their half more. Yeah. I don't think we let them out for having or needing the use of Dan James in a defensive format. Dan James got a lot of the ball high up the pitch, and what he did with it, probably it wasn't the best quality, which is why people would say Sancho comes in against Southampton, because it's going to be very similar. I don't see much speed in the Southampton team, so that's why I would go with the changes they made earlier on. But in terms of getting back to Fred and McTominay again, they were different. They weren't played in a holding role constantly all game, which they cannot do. They just haven't got that they haven't got that game in them, I don't think, either one of them. They're not the full-on, I love this role, I want to be here and be a destroyer constantly, not the Fabinho type, not the Jorginho type. They actually thrive in doing that position. They're the masters of that one position, when Fred and McTominay never were and never came through their clubs and youth systems, wherever they was, playing that. And McTominay definitely wasn't through our youth system. That's not his game. His game was the marauding forward, like he was yesterday, and coming back and helping where he has to help out. But I do feel like that's what I was getting at the start. I was like, surely Ollie isn't going to play these 2 so deep here and make it that sort of containment game against Leeds. He just put them on there and just said, let's take the game to Leeds and let's go at them. And that's what we did. We did it from the word go. And there's only them 2 in our midfield, I think, who are capable of getting up and down like they did yesterday. I wouldn't expect Pogba to do it. I don't think that's his game. And I definitely don't expect Van der Beek, you could say possibly, but Matic isn't that type of player. He's our only holding midfielder of that quality, I think, and he's a different player. So you're right in what you said, Mark. He definitely wasn't playing that same old McFred that we all feared from last season.
Well, it wasn't. To be fair, I said it this morning. It wasn't McFred. I know it's Beth's name, but that's the thing. I'll criticise McFred because McFred to me is 2 holding midfielders protecting the back 4. That was Fred and McTominay yesterday. Yeah. That's a different thing.
Exactly that. And they played that way. And it's no surprise Fred got his goal. I think.
Well, did Fred score after Matic came on? Did Fred go into the McTominay role and then Matic was holding at that point?
Matic came in at 5-1, didn't he?
Yeah, I think all the subs were made at 5-1.
Oh, right. So, so Fred was still the holding midfielder and he got forward for the goal then. That's even more impressive.
You think about it. Look, Fred scored. McTominay should have scored in the first half as well. because he was played through by Bruno in the first half. This is what I meant by creating chances before. And the fact that them two are in the box on the end of chances tells you everything you need to know about how they were played yesterday, because that was in the first minute and Fred was towards the last quarter of the game. So that was the whole ploy from Ollie, it seemed, yesterday. He just went, let's just go and let them play their games. And you said it then, Mike, that's Fred played Fred and McTominay. I thought McTominay was superb yesterday. I couldn't fault his performance at all. I thought he was in the right place when he needed to be, and he supported both the defence and attack.
Yeah, I mean, I got a bit of shit yesterday, but I actually did give McTominay a good score. So, I don't know what people are on about.
He deserved it yesterday.
Yeah. Beth, I know you. Let's move on to Pogba then. He's always divisive. I sort of want to talk about Pogba and where we think he fits in, because I know Ricky said before, Ollie's shoehorning him in. And to be honest, I sort of agree with that. I do. I think Pogba on the left wing is being shoehorned in. I know what's going to happen in the chat. People are going, stop. I like Pogba. I rate Pogba, but I don't think he's a left winger. But he's just got 4 assists from the wing. But you wanted to start off on something else anyway, because you've been watching Sky today. So you tell me what you think about Pogba and where his best position is, but you can start off with what you were going to talk about anyway.
Oh, I was just speaking about before we came on how I think I've had enough of Graham Souness. I actually have had enough of him on Sky Sports. I think Sky are kind of at fault for constantly allowing him to have this agenda on Sky Sports against Paul Pogba. It's completely out of order, and if it wasn't for Micah Richards on the show today, then Pogba would have been slandered again after doing his best with Man United and trying to get 4 assists. If a player wants to leave a football club, we've seen that with Harry Kane. Do I think not turning up to training's a good way to go about it? No, I don't. I don't think that is a good way to go about it. Do I think your agent coming out saying you want to leave is a good way to go about it? Absolutely not. But then things when it happens should be left there. An agenda shouldn't keep going on and on and on throughout a year when this player is now trying to do his best for the club that he's at. He's staying at Man United this season. We know that now. He got 4 assists yesterday. Souness again on Sky said, well, he's a £100 million player. That's what he should be doing. Absolutely no praise whatsoever. And his agenda with Pogba just keeps going on and on and on. And he's saying the thing with Harry Kane's different to Micah Richards is different. It's different. I've heard different. And then when Micah tries to defend Paul Pogba, he says, I don't want to talk about Manchester United anymore. I'm done with this conversation. In a very aggressive tone. I just think this agenda going on against him through him I just don't think it's on. And I think he's treated differently because maybe he's from abroad. Maybe he's just completely bitter towards Manchester United players that are from a different country. But I just think the way it keeps being allowed to go on and on and on, it's getting boring, and 2, it's unfair on the player. That's what my opinion is on that. And I just don't think he should be getting this coverage completely going in on Pogba every single opportunity he gets.
I think you're right. I do think you're right. I think that, Harry Kane
100% have an opinion, but it's like he's obsessed with talking negatively about him. Obsessed.
You know what it is? I mean, he is and was a very good footballer for Liverpool, which means nothing to me. But I just think he's one of those personalities, and we all come across them, who, even in the face of, an opinion that's not theirs, they're just stubborn. There's people in our fan base who, and I get told about it all the time, who still will not give Luke Shaw any credit because they called him shit and therefore he's shit. And he's positionally bad and, he's a liability, even though he's one of the best left backs in the world. Some people just can't change their opinion. And as I said, I've criticised Matic in the past, and then I've said, bloody hell. He's turned that around, and I just think Souness is just one of those people. But I think you are right, because we've seen it with De Gea. Like, De Gea last season got a lot of unfair stick from Sky and BT, and the cameras are on them before a game, and the fan base is like, "Why you got your cameras on De Gea? We're not even thinking about the goalkeeping situation." And you can get that. And Man City today, I mean, look, he's not foreign, but Grealish, it was all the cameras are on Grealish, and it's like, well, Sterling was shit. Mahrez was shit, Torres was shit, but yeah, let's put the cameras on Grealish, and they know. The problem is they know. Let's talk about Paul Pogba. What mainstream media are trying to do is they're trying to do what fan content does, but fan content does it naturally. Like, we started up about Varane and Sancho because that's topical and relevant to us. What mainstream media do is they go, oh, Pogba's always a topic, so let's bring it in when it's not relevant. And then it's like, I bet Souness didn't start talking about Pogba. I bet there was some reason for him to do it, or somebody said to him, start talking about it. And then, it just comes across as he comes across as an idiot, like you say.
It's just hypocrisy. You can talk about it without being a hypocrite. Yesterday, when he was kind of tailored in the way to praise Paul Pogba, because he was saying Greenwood was the standout and Mickey was that. But Pogba got 4 assists. He went, well, that's what £100 million player should be doing. Today, after the match, Grealish is 100 million, and he did. I thought he played quite well, but he did nothing and absolutely no mention of it. I mean, I know it's one-off games, but it's just this, any kind of way he can make a pop at it, it always happens. And I just don't think that's fair on the player. And I think it's getting very, very boring.
Well, Ricky, you must be like Souness, because you didn't mention Pogba yesterday either. Just as bad. Just as bad. But no, Ricky, you mentioned about Pogba. Let's talk about his position, because I think Beth's made a great point there. But let's talk about Pogba, the player. He got 4 assists yesterday. Ollie described it as a free roll. Now, you said before yesterday, we spoke, if you've not tuned in before, we were talking about what you do with Pogba. He's got 1 year left on his deal. Do you give him 400 grand a week? And Ricky was like, well, what's his position? He's sometimes he's midfielder, sometimes he's on the left wing. Ollie said he's given him a free roll yesterday. You're not going to give him a free roll against Man City. You're not going to give him a free roll away to Wolves, because you're going to get beat. Do it at home to Leeds. They're wide open. You've got 75,000 fans. Yeah, give him a free roll. What do you think about Pogba's sort of season? Because he's going to be here, and he's shown yesterday he's a fantastic player. But we've got so many good wide players. We've got Martial, Rashford, Sancho, Greenwood can play there, Dan James. If you put Pogba on the left wing and Bruno in the middle, that means you can only play one of Sancho, James, Greenwood, Rashford, Martial on the wing. That's not really sustainable. What do you feel about Pogba? Because he's such an important player. Loads of people are happy with him on the wing because he's got 4 assists against Leeds, but unfortunately we're not going to play Leeds every week, are we?
We're not going to play Leeds every week. No, it's not going to happen every week, but obviously he is a good player. He's a really good player. We said, I think when he first started on the left wing last season, a couple of times, I remember, I think he'd come on at half time away to AC Milan, didn't he? And he changed the game. He's a good player wherever you play him, and I don't 100% believe Ollie. He's not. I know he drifts in field a lot. 3 of his assists came from through balls, didn't they? And one was from actually the left wing. The assist for Fred was from the left wing. So 3 were with through balls where he drifted a little bit more into the middle, or from a defensive position. It was a through ball for Greenwood's goal from a defensive position. But when you talk about a free roll, you've got to have you cannot against anybody not have a decent team shape when they've got the ball. So a lot of people like to think, when they look at the team and says who's playing on the right wing and who's playing on the left wing, they look at it when you're attacking, but you also need to look at it when you're defending. When you're defending, Pogba's position is on the left-hand side and Dan James was on the right-hand side. You know what I mean? And like you've just said, it appeared when you've watched the game that we didn't have a lot of defending to do, but like you've just said, they had 60% possession, didn't they? So for 60% of that game, we've got to be in our correct team shape. You know what I mean? No, whether they're attacking or not, when they've got the ball, they are trying to mount an attack. So when they're trying to mount an attack, you've got to get in your defensive shape. So, he's given license to drift around, but he's also got to stay primarily on the left. That's how I see it. Whether we can do that all the time with him, I don't know. We spoke about this last week. McTominay and Fred, they came straight back in. They're all his favourites. A lot of us on this show and lots of fans and people were saying after the Everton game it's going to be Matic and Van der Beek. So we've got Bruno. We've got Bruno really plays as a 10, don't we? We've got Fred. We've got McTominay. We've got Van der Beek. We've got Matic, who are going to need some games. We spoke in the Everton game. I know it was a friendly game. He just wanted to give the kid a run. But even Garner played in the middle and Pogba got shoved out to the left. So I think most of the time when he plays, I'm not suggesting for one moment Garner will get game time, by the way, but Matic will get a bit of game time. Van der Beek might get a bit of game time. He hardly got any last year, but he might get a bit more this year. I think you're going to find that Pogba almost exclusively plays on the left when he does play.
Do you think that's a good point, actually. It wasn't a topic, but I know it's a massive thing for the fans. I hope I'm wrong, Adam, but I think Van der Beek's finished at United already. I think he's come back. he's fit. He played well last week, and he should have started yesterday. And that sounds flawed because we've just won 5-1. So Ollie is right not to pick him, but I just don't see how he's going to get any game time. I really hope we're going to see rotation in that. But what's your feeling on Van der Beek this season? Because maybe he will get more game time.
He has to, otherwise he's gone, isn't he? Like you said, if he doesn't play this season, then he's going to be on to his agent saying, look at the age of this team. None of these players in here are getting any, and they're all pretty much younger than him in that forward line. So he's struggling there. He's never going to replace Bruno under Ole. That's never going to happen. And then you're coming up against Pogba in a wide position with like what Ricky just said and you said then, with McFred coming in every single week, playing most of the games. Then where does Van der Beek fit into this team? I don't honestly see the Pogba issue in terms of where he plays changing, or the Van der Beek situation changing, unless Ollie changes formation, changes shape for certain games as well, which we shouldn't disregard. But the fact that he went through the last two pre-season games in a 4-2-3-1, he started with a 4-2-3-1-ish with how Fred and McTominay played yesterday. It seems to be his go-to formation, but we haven't seen Varane in the team yet, and whether that changes anything. But then how does Donny come in? Because inevitably you're going to have one sitting player and probably a Bruno and a Pogba either side in a 4-3-3, I'm guessing. Is he going to rely on one position of a holding player with Donny van der Beek? Does he try and push him forward? I don't see him making any starts in the forward line. And then he's up against Fred and McTominay. So you're probably right on that, unless there is a drastic change in shape in the Premier League. He's not going to play. I can see him coming in some of the Carabao Cup games. Is he going to risk him in the Champions League? Because that's important for Ollie as well this season. I can see where you're going with it. It is a bit
about the game.
He doesn't get in.
We're going to talk about striking in a minute, but I just think people often approach a new season and go, it's a squad game, but then you hit the end of the season and you might only use 15 or 16 players. And, you can be out of the Carabao Cup in very, very quickly, and you can pick your first team in the FA Cup as well as the champion. Like you said, Adam, really, it's about whether Ollie's going to rotate, because if he goes like he has done, he doesn't rotate much. He will pick Bruno in the FA Cup, the Champions League, the Carabao Cup. That's the thing. And I suppose we'll have to wait and see.
Well, that's it. But he's not going to really get a sniff before the international break. With there being so little games, I don't think I think Ollie's got. And we're talking about the Pogba issue there. That rolls down into Donny van der Beek's issue as well, because you can't dislodge Paul Pogba for Donny van der Beek to play the same game. As good as Donny van der Beek is, I don't think he's as effective in that wider area as what a Paul Pogba could be. And then if you do put another forward in when everyone's fit and Paul Pogba has to drop back, does Donny van der Beek get in ahead of Paul Pogba in the central role? He doesn't. And with Ollie at the helm, it's like we just said then, how do you see him coming in? You know where and he could possibly play, and we all have our opinions on what we think he could bring to the team, but we've got to look at it realistically at most of the time as well. And it's like Ollie just proved it first game of the season. Our midfield and our fit midfield in pre-season was Matic and Donny, and that's got thrown right out the window in the first game. So it does look like he is behind. What is he? Fifth or sixth in the pecking order in the central role. So that's a long way back. It is a long way back unless you're winning and competing for all the trophies this season, which we all said we should be. Donny van der Beek struggling to get 20 games, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Beth, you're muted again. No, you're not.
I'm not.
No, Beth, you're back now.
Was that yesterday we were winning 5-1, weren't we?
You're still muted, Beth.
No,
you're not really. I'm winding you up.
Basically, yesterday we're winning 5-1. Matic comes on, doesn't he? And I think you could have easily brought Van der Beek on there, gave him a bit of confidence. We're on the attack. Fred and Van der Beek, for me, could have held that game there. I understand he wants to keep the big scoreline, wants to keep the goal difference. It's the first game of the season, he wants to keep everyone high. I get that. But Van der Beek he's the future. Well, we're hoping he's the future. He could have come in and played that pivot role, given a little bit of confidence coming into the new season quite easily, and he still chose to go with Matic. And I just think it shows, like Adam said, how down the pecking order he really is. And when that substitution was made, it made me think, what actually is the reason? Because Donny could handle this game perfectly fine. I thought he would have thrived in the game yesterday, actually, with the way that the tempo was, the quick passing. And I just think Ollie must really not see him as part of this team. If even yesterday he couldn't get a minute, I just thought it was very, very strange. And I thought it showed his perspective on him.
I thought against Everton, he was fantastic in them 45 minutes. His tempo, his tenacity, his first touch passing. And I also thought against Wolves at the end of the season was the same. Don't know what more he can do. I'm the same with you, Beth. I don't know what more he can do. We've just won 5-1, so I don't want to... I'm more talking about the rest of the season. I'm not talking about he should have started yesterday, even though I would have done. The saddest thing for me was when I watched Match of the Day back. One of the goals, I think it was the 4th or 5th goal, they cut to the bench, and whilst he was smiling, his eyes to me said something very different to the rest of the bench, and I just think he looked a little bit, sad. He looked sad, and I felt sad for him because I think, it's a really exciting time at United. We've got Varane and Sancho. We've just won 5-1. And I think if you're part of Ollie's thing, it's a very exciting time. I just really don't think Van der Beek is. On
that, Mark, there, mate, he may not be the only player this season who has to deal with that. You look at that forward line, mate.
Well, we're going to go on to that. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, you've got Cavani, Martial, Rashford when he comes back. I mean, one of these players is going to be sitting out an awful lot of games. I think it'll be Martial.
I think it will be Martial.
The thing is, though, that's another reason why Pogba is eventually going to have to move back into the midfield. When Rashford comes back, he's going to be playing Rashford on the left wing. He is 100% going to play Rashford on the left wing. You've got Greenwood, you've got Sancho, you've got Cavani, and then Pogba's going to have to drop into the midfield, and he has to play because of how he was playing yesterday and how he plays with Bruno, and that leaves, you have to play in Fred or McTominay in that one role. That can't happen either. So that's the whole debate on the CDM. Preferably, you would want a CDM that can come in and play that role, a very, very good one as well, but we haven't got that. So that's where it gives Ollie a head scratcher, is where I'm going to fit all these players in, because the way you could do that is having a top-class CDM in there, but we don't have that. We have McFred, so it does take up one position. That means someone who's very high quality, who Ollie is going to want to play, is going to have to sit out purely so them two can play one role in the games where they do sit back, and that does happen.
Well, you said it, Ricky, there. Let's talk about the two things, really. You were shaking your head there saying you don't think he'll pull Pogba from the left.
Beth might be right. He might put Rashford back in on the left wing, but if he did, I'd be astonished.
Even if you don't agree, we'll do it.
Well, maybe he will. But if we keep playing well and keep winning games and scoring goals, will he change it? And especially if it means dropping Pogba.
I wouldn't bring Rashford back in. If we're top of the league when he comes back in October, I wouldn't bring him back in if we're playing well. I mean, I think Pogba's better than Rashford. Some teams do use midfielders on the wing. Bernardo Silva's been used there for Man City, hasn't he? And, Mason Mount sort of does it a little bit for Chelsea. I think, Marcus Rashford's a great player, but all I want to see is rotation done fairly. I don't want to see rotation done favouritism. And I think Donny doesn't get a fair ride. And I do think Martial's going to go down that route as well. I think already I can see Mason's seen to be ahead of Martial. Rashford will be ahead of Martial. Cavani will be ahead of Martial. I don't think Martial's going to get a lot of game time, and yet I think he could have a really big season.
Well, we spoke about this, didn't we, the other day, in terms of Ollie has to step up now and run with his team. He has to play the best team, not the so-called best players. What works best for him. And this is now we're at a stage. Let's get it right. This is a fantastic problem to be having and talking about.
I love it. Yeah.
And this now is how you expect and what you'd expect a Manchester United manager to be having to deal with. This is Ollie's next stage of the learning process that we're letting him have at Manchester United. He's now got to manage this, because right now you've got Donna, you've got Martial, and these players now, quality players that we've got, aren't happy. We know they're not going to be happy, because no player who, especially Martial, who's had good seasons before, is going to be happy sitting out now. he's not going to be happy. And Ollie has to now, this is going to push his relationships and his managerial credentials to the max, because it is going to be very difficult this season behind the scenes. And rotation, where it can be done, is going to be massive. And I think is what he's going to be judged on this season more than anything, because there's going to be games, like you said, late on. We're not going to be needing to play Bruno in certain games when we're already 4-0 up into a second leg. We can't be doing that this season. We've seen how good Bruno is with a rest. We've seen how the whole squad is. Having had a pre-season and a break, how lively they look. That surely has to play in Ollie's mind and say, look, what happens when you refresh certain players in the team and how they've come in and just flourished in a game like that. It will help him, but is he going to do it? That is what I think his biggest challenge and what he's going to be judged on this season, especially by a lot of the United fan base.
Well, Bruno didn't come off yesterday, did he? I don't think he did come off yesterday, which is fine. But I do think, making 3 substitutions with 20 minutes to go and you're 5-1 up, I'd be stunned if he didn't. I do think this is a work in progress. I really do. I think it's about, how much he rotates, because I trust Donny to come on where Bruno plays. I trust Matic to come on where Fred plays. I trust, Rashford to come on for Pogba. I trust Martial to come on for Cavani. And I want to see him coming on if it's 1-1. And we need to, this is what Klopp does. This is what Pep does. It's 1-1. It's not quite working. You're off Cavani. Martial, you're on. That's when I talk about subs. I think some people think, oh, he made subs yesterday. That's improvement. 3 subs with 20 minutes to go, 5-1 up. That's great. But
can I come in?
Go on, go. Yeah, Ricky, go.
I hate being critical of the manager when you've just won 5-1, but when I think of making substitutions when you're 5-1 up, I would take players off, either who desperately need a rest, but we've only just started. Maybe nobody needs a rest. But also, I'd take off players who I'd be frightened of those players getting injured. Let's get somebody off who you want to keep fit. And also, I'd also take players off who are automatically going to start next week. When you're 5-1 up, why play those players who are automatically 5-1? You could have brought you or Adam on for a 5-1, and we still.
I'd have loved it. We'd have loved that.
Still would have won 5-2. You know what I mean? So he's taken off. He's taken off Dan James. What's the point of taking off Dan James in that game? Why take off Dan James? No matter what you think of Dan James, with 5-1 up, it doesn't matter, does it? He could stay on. I know it's worked out okay. We've still won 5-1 in the end. But surely it'd make more sense to bring Bruno off when you're 5-1 up than Dan James. Or, correct me if I'm wrong, the 3 players who came off, McTominay, Dan James and Paul Pogba, are they all absolutely certain to start next week? Obviously, Dan James isn't, and not in my opinion. Is the manager thinking that? Because as a manager, I'd be thinking, it's 5-1, I'm going to take off 3 players who are definitely starting next week. That's what I'd do.
Yeah. I think the proof will be in the pudding as to whether, if we're drawing against Wolves in a couple of weeks with 20 minutes to go, is he going to take Cavani off and chuck Martial on? Is he going to take, is he going to take Fred off and bring Matic on to control the midfield and push everybody forward? They're the subs that I think Ollie struggled with last year, but we'll see how it works out. Let's talk about the striking situation, though, because Greenwood was fantastic yesterday. Cavani, Martial. I mean, we'll start with you, Beth. For you, it's a difficult question to phrase, but actually it's quite simple. Greenwood was fantastic yesterday. It's a big season for him. Everyone's talking about Erling Haaland, but if Greenwood has the big season, do you need Haaland? It's Cavani's last year, and we know that. And then you got Martial, who's sort of in between Greenwood and Cavani, in that he's 25, and he needs a big season as well, or he'll probably say he's going to go. Can you share that out with 3 strikers, or have we got to be looking at 1 and 2? And how would you do it?
I think Martial's, I don't know, I hope he has a good season, but I think he's the one that's in trouble the most, if I'm honest. I think Greenwood, again, massive season. I think yesterday he played really well for the game. I do think with Greenwood, though, he's still not quite a number 9. His hold-up play, with the way his physicality is, I think that needs a little bit more work, and I don't quite see him as the target man Cavani is. Not yet, anyway. I feel like he's more of, like Ollie was saying in his press conference, he's more of a lucid striker who can play all 3 of them positions. He's not quite an out-and-out striker. And I do think we are going to need that out-and-out striker, because last season we saw it, we did need Cavani, we relied on that. So I don't think everything can be on Greenwood on his own next season. For me, I still think we need Haaland. One, you don't say no to Haaland. Have you seen him? He's still this season again, he started tearing it up. I think he got, I don't know how many assists and how many goals in his game the other day. He's a great player, and I think he would come into that team and do absolute wonders. I really do. I think we still do need that striker when Cavani leaves. But I think Greenwood's development is extremely exciting. I think he can be turned into a number 9. I don't think he's quite there yet. But I also think it would be a shame to lose the way he cuts in off the wings as well. I think that is a really special part of his game. And I think he's a special player. He's got many different talents. He's got a striker's finish. There's no doubt about that. That clinical finish yesterday was amazing. I thought his pressing was great. His runs he was making were really good. He's got excellent pace. I just don't think he's the pinpoint target man yet. And I think we do need that. And when Cavani leaves next year, in certain games where you need that diving header, you need that scruffy goal, I do think we're still going to need an out-and-out striker who knows the trade well. And that's where Haaland does come in. Where Martial is on this, I'm not sure, because I think Martial can play striker and I think he can play left wing. Personally, I prefer him as a left winger, but I still think he plays striker very well. I think he holds the ball up well. I thought when he came on yesterday, that's one thing I noticed a little bit different. He was really getting his back to the defender and getting the ball and starting to make them passes, which is one thing I really do like about Martial. That links up the play and it gets everyone involved. But when you've got Greenwood putting in them sort of performances, you've got Cavani, who was excellent last season, he's top. You've got Pogba now playing on the left wing, Rashford on the left wing, Sancho even, and Greenwood. It's going to be hard for Martial to get his place back, considering how poor his season was last season. I think if he gets a chance early on this season and he starts playing the way that we know he can, I think he's definitely got a shout and he's definitely got a place, because squad depth is massive. Squad depth is massive for challenging for anything. We are going to need Martial. And when you see Martial coming off the bench, instead of the likes of, I don't know, Matic, Pereira, them players that we've had before, when we saw yesterday, Sancho and Martial were coming on, we're like, wow, we're not used to this. So I think that's where Martial does play a part. But to get a third team spot in that team is going to be extremely, extremely difficult for him.
I mean, on that, actually, do you know when everyone's fit, do all the strikers and all these forwards we're talking about make the bench? Because we need to mix the bench up and we're overloaded. So if you think Dan James, Martial, Cavani, Rashford, Sancho, Greenwood, there's only a certain amount you want to put on the bench because you need balance on your bench as well. And obviously, we're still not sorted Lingard out yet, for God's sake. I just don't know.
Just an update on Lingard, actually. The West Ham goalkeeper's pleading him to come to West Ham on socials. So I think he should. I mean, look, he should go, shouldn't he? The whole show today is a big hint. We've never mentioned Lingard in all these options, and that's unfortunate for him. But there's no space for him, is there?
There's not. No, and that comes down. It's like Beth just mentioned it. Then you got Martial and Sancho coming on in a team that's already 5-1 up, and you're not even talking about Cavani and Rashford. Yeah, you can't have 4 forwards on the bench. Do you know what I mean? You need balance, because then you're talking about Donny and Matic. And then you need a defender.
Midfielder.
Yes. You know what I mean? You need your goalkeeper. You need at least 1 or 2 defenders. So the problem doesn't come to starting. It's who's going to start making the bench. Because the realization now is that we are in complete spoilt mode for our forward line. And it's who wants it more. It's who wants it more right now. You're going to have to come on that pitch and go, pretty much like Solskjaer and Sheringham in the day did against York and Cole. It's like, I'm coming on. I'm the one who's going to score 4 goals at Nottingham Forest at the City Ground, not Cole or York, who were on 2 apiece. That's where you have to be now. That's the level you have to be. We talked about United and actually challenging for titles. This is what title challenging squads have issues with. This is what you're going to have to deal with. The mentality of these players now is, I can't be sitting here sulking. I can't be moaning. I'm going on that pitch and I'm going to prove a point. That's where they need to be. And do you know what? All the forwards yesterday held their hand up and went, I'm here, I'm fighting. Even Dan James, they all did their bit yesterday. And now the others are going to come in and they're like, Rashford sat at home with that shoulder going, Christ.
I would actually be worried.
You've got to be worried. You have to be worried because, like I said, you got to be thinking, am I going to be in this match day squad? Am I going to be on the bench?
Well, Ricky,
it's reality.
Ricky, you're a big fan of Martial. I mean, look, listen to what Beth said there. I'm a fan of Martial, but I do agree. I think that he had a bad season last year. Cavani had a good season. Greenwood had a good season. And I'm actually comfortable that Martial might have to wait for his chance. I think he's got to be third choice at the moment. But I just hope he is given chances. I don't know what you think about
that. First of all, I want to say I agree with 99% of what Beth said there. I thought she spoke excellently about all the strikers' different strengths. And I'm glad she said that she noticed the hold-up player, Martial, when he came on. Martial's 3 times the player Mason Greenwood is right now. 3 times the player. So we've got to be choosing between Martial and Cavani for the centre-forward role.
Very different players, though, Ricky. I think Martial and Greenwood. You know, I think you know, Mason's only 19 for a start. You know, Martial's 25.
I'm going to come back straight away. I know he's only 19. I've said this time and time again. I want to win games now. You know, if he's going to be a better player when he's 22 or when he's 23, great. But right now, he's nowhere near.
I'll tell you what,
but that's what I was going to say.
Right now, Greenwood's ahead of Martial all day long. Right now, and now, I would put Greenwood in ahead of Martial without even blinking an eye.
I just think they're very different players. Martial, good with his back to goal, good link-up play, likes to take on a player. I think Greenwood's more get the ball out of my feet and direct. He reminds me of Beth will be too young. Stan Collymore. I think he's going to be that sort of a striker. He's powerful, he's quick, he spins and runs into space. He can't do what Martial can't do what Greenwood did with that goal. Like, it's just cutting bottom corner. He's the best finisher we've got.
Seen Martial score loads of goals like that.
Nah, he can't finish like Greenwood.
Not of his left foot. He doesn't like that.
He's the best finisher.
He's right-footed and Greenwood's left-footed.
No, Greenwood's both. Greenwood's both.
Is it?
Greenwood can score with both. Greenwood takes penalties. He's got 2 free kicks with either foot in the youth system. These elite strikers. For me, there's only one other player who scores that goal yesterday that Greenwood did.
Greenwood's strongest foot is left foot or not?
Yeah, but he is, but he can hit it right.
No, he can hit it right.
That Martial couldn't have scored that with his left foot is ridiculous because
not like Greenwood
because he's right-footed and Greenwood's left-footed.
No. This is why. This is why Greenwood starts before Martial for me, because he can play with both feet. Martial doesn't score that goal yesterday for me
because he's got amazing finishing. His pace is excellent. The runs he makes are great. I think his pressing as well yesterday was great, and we've seen that. I thought he was doing Martial's pressing for him at the Everton game. Martial's dribbling, his technique, and his hold-up play are excellent. I think he's more of a target man than Greenwood at the moment, and I think he knows the number 9 role more than Greenwood
on that as well.
100%. But with potential and the way that they are on form, for me, Greenwood goes in beforehand at the moment.
Yeah.
But I do love Martial's player.
On that as well, Beth, what you said there, what Ricky touched on Greenwood and him not playing the simple ball and cutting in all the time. Yesterday, he should have had 3 assists. He set Dan James through. He set Paul Pogba through, all from central roles, where he showed a bit of skill, bit of cleverness, played the simple ball. And you know what? He absolutely played across the park brilliantly up front yesterday for me.
Brilliant ball to Pogba. Which was the assister of the assist for Fred's goal.
He did, yeah.
Superb turn and a superb. This is one you've not mentioned. I'm not frightened of mentioning good things that players do. They've got to be able to do some good things. They've got to do. You don't get. I've said this in the past. You cannot get to play for Manchester United if you can't do some good things on the park. Now,
that's where we disagreed, wasn't it? Because I seen Greenwood's our best forward towards the back end of last season.
He's still not holding it up well enough, and he still doesn't get in there where it hurts like Cavani does. Martial, he might not be Cavani, but he gets more goals like Cavani's goals than Greenwood does. Gets himself in there where it hurts.
I think it's a bit of a non-argument. I think it's a great argument, but I think it's a bit of a non-argument because I'll go back to what I said. I think they're very different, and I think they offer very different things. And I can't stand it when people start arguing about Pogba and Bruno because I think, well, they're both United players and they can both play together. I think there's a way of Martial and Greenwood playing together. I think there's also a way of picking Martial over Greenwood and there's a way of picking Greenwood over Martial. I think the problem might be that Ollie goes back to what I said before. It's great we've all got different opinions. I like Martial and I like Greenwood and I think they're very different. The issue is, will Ollie rotate them enough that we get the best out of the different player that we've got? Because I think there's a game... Maybe Southampton, Martial's a better choice than Greenwood because his hold-up play is important and his link-up play in tight space is important. But then maybe against somebody like, like a Leeds or maybe an Everton that's going to have more of a go of you away from home, you've got Greenwood who can spin into spaces and he's both-footed. I think it's a good problem to have. I mean, ultimately, I think we might get to a point where they don't get rotated and you've got to sell Martial next summer. But, I think it's a good problem to have. And I rate them both. I just think they're very different.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that everyone's looking at Martial this season and saying he has to have a great season or they think he's probably going tells you everything. You need to know. He had a shocker last year. You can't afford, like Ricky said, you can't afford to have shocking seasons. Not now, anyway, with the calibre of forwards we've got. You have to fight, like I said, for your place in this team. And if you're not going to, you're not going to take your chances this season. That's why I said we needed to be clinical, and we was yesterday. We were very clinical, even though we missed a load of chances in the first half. We made up for it in the second. I just feel like there's no time anymore for a lot of these players. And I said it, I think, a couple of shows back. The likes of Rashford, Pogba, Martial, these players who've been here a few years now, it's time. They stood up and actually won us a trophy, a significant trophy, because they've been here long enough now. They're in, they're part of the furniture now, and they're the ones that the rest of this team should be looking at and going, these are the ones we need to look up to. These are the ones who've been here for time and they know what it's about. So it is a massive season for a few players. And you could well see Pogba and Martial both leave at the end of the season. It could easily happen.
We've mentioned it, a few of us. I just hope Ollie has the balls to rotate this team and rotate it fairly so that at the end of the season we go, well, they had a chance, they've got to go. I don't want to see another Van der Beek last year where it's like, well, he's not been given a chance. And we've overplayed the other person. He's got to rotate it, and I hope he does, because I tell you what, the options we've got, apart from holding midfield, the options we've got are really, really, really encouraging. Look, we could talk for a lot longer. We'll wrap it up there. But thanks for coming on, Ricky.
Pleasure, mate. Enjoyed it. Good crack.
Adam?
Yeah. Cheers, mate. Loved it. Voice will be better next week, promise.
And Beth, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Can't hear you again. No, I did hear it that time. And of course, thanks everyone in the chat. Really enjoyed it. Fantastic opening weekend. Fantastic to be able to talk about actual football and not really talk about anything to do with transfers. One game at a time is absolutely spot on, Nigel Morton. And I can't wait. I mean, it's a shame we've got to wait a whole bloody week till Southampton, really. But it will help the players this first few weeks just to get their fitness levels up. But we looked fantastic yesterday. Thanks everyone for watching. And we've got Romano tomorrow. I think we've got Paul Ince tomorrow as well. Get his thoughts as well. We'll speak to you tomorrow. Thanks everyone for watching.